Hello and welcome back to the Motivating Force podcast. Joining me as always, we have host Sway, an aspiring Marine Corps officer who's currently finishing up ROTC and his bachelor's in the criminal justice field. And myself, Justin, a motivational speaker and leader who's always more than excited to share all of our wonderful ideas and topics with you guys. Jumping into it on this Monday morning, in essence, we're going to be talking about creating an actionable plan. And this idea came up when I was sitting around talking to Tyrell about some of her coworkers and whatnot. And, she was talking about the critical moments in people's lives that finally get them to wake up. And what we were talking about was her belief in untapped potential in people. Being the certified personal trainer that she is, she puts a lot of faith into people and their abilities to overcome things. And it was really interesting because it really led us down to one simple phrase in conclusion. And at the end of the conversation, we said, everyone is dreaming. You're either dreaming while you're asleep, and if you're lucky, you're out there living the dream.
I mean, that's a good one because, a lot of people do tend to be like sleepwalking, right? They're kind of just like mindless zombies going through the void of what it means to like live your life. And, being motivational speakers that we are, like, you kind of want to like grab them and like shake them, like wake up, do something, like be productive, find your passion. Or last week we talked about your ikigai. And I'm excited for this conversation because I do relate to this, and I want to see where like that conversation went with her like coworkers. Like, what was the deciding fact of what were those crucial moments?
Just getting those critical moments where it just takes that 1 second for you to realize like who you are and what you're doing and why it's not where you need to be.
Yeah.
And how that brings success out in a lot of people. And it was just kind of what was brought to her mind, listening to some people talk about just some crazy wild things that probably things they shouldn't be involved in doing in the first place. So that's what really brought on the conversation. And like you said, being the motivational speakers we are, this is our bread and butter.
Yeah.
Our job is to go out there and shake people until they're awake. And it's like, do something with yourself. Like, that's what we want to see. That's what makes us happy, is having people out there doing things. So that's what brought me into talking about creating an actionable plan.
Yeah, because it really does suck seeing somebody that's so good and passionate in something, but they're not like full time. They're not dedicating their life into it. And it's almost like a letdown to other people that see that we see all the potential that you have, but you're wasting it. Like, you're not using it properly.
And for some of those people who are just going to start waking up, we want you guys to be able to go somewhere, which is what we're going to cover. And I know we always talk about before with making a plan, and it's like, that's the dream written down on paper.
Yeah.
But as true as that is, because 100% it is, this is how we're going to get into the applicable side of that and get you guys working on things. And from doing some research, there was really one common denominator in everything I found. And that was kind of this plan that was created by George Doran back in, I believe, was the early 80s. And it was an article that he came out with. He's a journalist. And he came out with SMART goals. So this starts as SMART goals, SMART being the acronym. It's specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's relevant, and time.
Okay.
It's really easy to see when you break it down into kind of like the three little categories here. So you have your first two, specific and measurable, towards creating an actionable plan. And you can't achieve a goal if you don't have like a very clear determination of what that goal is.
Yeah.
And that requires both those things. It needs to be specific, so that way you actually know what you're out there trying to do. And it needs to be measurable, so that way you are doing something.
Yeah. It's almost like if you're playing darts and the goal is to just hit the dart board, that specific goal is the bullseye. Other people just go, I just want to hit the board. But realistically, you kind of just want to hit the bullseye. So having that clear focus on the bullseye is what really is going to get you to hit it. Instead of just going, oh, well, it's any of them, any spot on the board.
Right. And hitting a 2 all the time probably isn't your ideal stature there.
Yeah.
So it's a good analogy. The next two being that, you can't achieve your goal if it's something literally impossible. And this kind of goes into that it's attainable and that it's relevant. Because if it's unattainable, obviously it's impossible, right? And I think relevancy plays a big part in that as well. Because if you're trying to go completely out to left field, just your field of expertise, whatever you're doing in life, and you're like, I'm going to just completely turn my life 180 and travel in this complete opposite direction because like that's my wake up moment.
Yeah.
That's not impossible, but it's not probable.
Yeah. You're going to have to waste so much more time trying to learn that field and dedicate like yourself to a path that you're not even familiar with. When it's like you have this passion, just go down that lane instead of going down left field like you're talking about.
Yeah, you shouldn't be taking steps backwards. And that can create that impossibility for you. And also setting goals that are impossible in the first place. If you're super overweight and your goal is to run a marathon by the end of the year, I've got some bad news for you.
Yeah.
Your goal needs to be attainable. It needs to make sense. And that comes a lot with knowing that, we're all human. We're not superhuman. So you need to take into account for the level you're able to get things done at.
Yeah, your physical capabilities and
even your mental capabilities. People get burned out a lot faster on different topics than other people do. And you need to make sure that you're kind of in a realm, back to the relevancy, you're kind of in a realm that is something you can kind of be that marathon runner in. And then at the same time, make sure you're not running that Ironman.
Yeah.
And finally, of course, time being a really big issue. And I kind of had to think about that for a minute, because it's like, well, are we talking like why do I need to necessarily set deadlines for certain things? Like, why can't some of these goals just have that like extrinsic value to them, like just being the better person? But then of course that breaks every single one of the other rules, because it's something it's not specific, it's not measurable, things of that nature. But what really kind of made sense to me was taking this quote from Neil deGrasse Tyson, one of your favorite people.
Yeah.
And when he was talked about being able to live forever.
As a matter of fact.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, right there.
There you go, guys.
Yeah. And, he was being interviewed and they were talking about the potential to live forever. Like to create that immortality in people. And they asked him like if he would take it, and being the big science guy and whatnot. And he's kind of surprised everybody when he was like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
He's like, I would not take immortality ever. And they're like, okay, why? And he's like, if there's no deadlines in my life, I wouldn't be nearly as successful as I am today.
Correct.
He said he'd get nothing done because he'd have forever to accomplish it.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I love people that think the way that he does, because it almost sounds like he's like killing your dreams by saying things like that. Like, oh, he's the science guy, so a fictional thing like living forever and being immortal, obviously he's going to be into it because sci-fi. But when he really breaks it down and he goes the logical approach, it really makes you then take that step back and think about it. Like, oh wait, that's a good point. I wouldn't want to live forever. It's the people, like, when you change your train of thought that way and you rule out all the fictional things and you realize that, yeah, there is a timeline for things, those are the people that actually get things done with their life. They're the ones that actually achieve those goals, because they don't look at the deadline being like, oh, a week from now. It's, oh, my lifetime, I have to get certain things done, so let me act on it now instead of 10 months from now or something. Like, instead of pushing things off, they're the ones that are always on top of things.
Yeah, I mean, they just want to live that fulfilling life and be able to accomplish as much as they can every day. Because it's kind of like one of the cliches where they talk about, live every day like it's your last. But that doesn't mean go out there and go partying and go drinking and say goodbye to your loved ones. It means get out there and get some work done.
Yeah.
Because if today's your last day, what are you going to accomplish with your life?
Yeah, what do you have to look back on? That you were just a partyholic? You were just drinking all the time? That wasn't really fulfilling. That wasn't successful. That wasn't leaving anything for your friends, family, for your community, like we talked about before.
Yeah, it's all the self-serving mentality. So it's great when you get into talking about deadlines, because it does get you out of that. It makes you realize, like, hey, your time is going to come to an end, and there's a whole world that's going to keep on spinning. So what can you do to make that a better place? And that's what's really important. And that does come into effect in any actionable plan you're trying to create. Because if you're not creating a plan that's going to benefit society in one way or another, it's not a plan that should be acted upon. You know what I mean? And either way you want to spin that, like, say your plan is to get out there and start a new business, and say you're going to go open up a food truck or something, right? The first thing that should come to your mind about that is like, well, how are you helping out your community? Well, I mean, you're providing food for them, you're providing sustenance, and you're going to make great quality food, and maybe you're bringing in a different cuisine, right? Something from like your cultural background, and like you're going to open up the window for possibilities of like, Greek food in your small little town and things like people never even heard of.
Yeah, a new branch of culture that nobody's familiar with in that community that's going to get them to start looking into that. And then the more knowledge, the better, right?
I do say all that to kind of bring it around to like, you will find how you are contributing to society with a lot of things. Because I'm not saying obviously for things that are like self-fulfilling and self-improvement or whatnot, because obviously we are all about that here as well. I'm not saying like don't do those things. Like you should just totally be a servant to society. But what I'm saying is even in those small things, like you deciding like you're going to go open up a business, you will find a reason. You'll always find these little reasons why it's beneficial to society. Okay. And you should always seek those reasons, because as a human being, that is going to inspire you to keep going.
Yeah. Well, you're also going to have the feedback from the community or from the friends and family that are benefiting off of this goal that you're achieving, right? Because you're going to have the people that are going to tell you how like impactful it is to have your business around, or whatever the case, but that's going to motivate you to keep going. That positive feedback. It's going to keep that PMA within yourself as well, because then you're going to start feeling better. Your confidence is going to go up in what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, and that is kind of that goal, right? You should always be doing something that's going to make you happy and keep you moving forward. And especially if it's a plan that you need to draw out and work on, that's going to take time. And whether it's a month or it's a year or 5 years even, you have to have that along the way, which is kind of why, as you guys might have noticed, how I kind of flew past the specific and the measurable side, because this is where I wanted to come back to it. So hitting that, the attainability, the relevance, and the time was kind of important up front to really bring in the emphasis towards the specific side and the measurable side of it. Getting all those smaller ones out of the way, let's get back into those bigger ones. Of course, we'll go, of course, as we're going backwards here, we're going to start off with that measurable side of it. So, like, personally for me, I don't know if it's like the inner, like, video gamer dude or whatnot. But,
leaderboards?
The leaderboards, right?
Yeah.
But it's the accomplishment, the dings, seeing all the trophies come in and all the awards come in and whatnot. I like to create a lot of milestones for myself.
Which is good.
And even if they're milestones that don't necessarily come with a reward.
Okay. Of
course, you have the bigger ones that you should reward yourself, give yourself rewards for. You can have smaller ones along the way that are just notable.
Yeah.
Maybe give yourself a day off or something when you reach that mark. Something small, but, because of course the reward should be comparable to how big the milestone is. But you should create a lot of milestones along the way. And that's just personally, because if you need it to be measurable, that's one way to measure something, especially when it can be really kind of askew on what you're trying to measure, what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. I mean, you can even apply the milestone concept when you're achieving just smaller goals, like when I go running. It's probably one of the reasons why I hate treadmills, because I'm stationary and there's nothing for me to like give myself as that like reward. I mean, there's like the little ticker on the screen, but when I go running, I like to like I'll tell myself, okay, you can stop after that tree. But then when I get to the tree, I'll go, okay, never mind, the next tree. And then you keep doing that, and the next thing you know, you're hitting 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles. Like, it becomes easier when you're like, okay, let me stop over there instead of let me just stop after a mile of doing this, because then you're going to be like, I'm done. Like I got no reward the whole mile until you got it. Not until you reach the mile. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. You set those smaller milestones for you, and it makes you go a lot further.
Yeah.
And the same thing applies here. It's kind of like that 5-minute rule. If there's something that you really don't want to do in life, set a timer for 5 minutes and sit down and start working on it. Because chances are when that 5-minute timer goes off, you're going to turn that timer off and you're going to keep working on what you're doing. Because you're already there, your mind's already dedicated to it. So it's kind of that same principle where, like, you see that tree and you're like, okay, we're going to that tree. Okay, now that one. Okay, now that building over there. And you just keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And that's what these milestones allow people to create, is it allows you to keep moving forward every single day.
Yeah. And
that moves us on to the specific nature of that plan. What is it exactly you're trying to accomplish? Because for myself, like, and it's a little ironic for me because I do work the other way when it comes to writing. So when I do creative writing, I like to come up with a title, and then I can create content for a title. I don't just go out there and spew ideas and create content and then go through it and determine a title for it. So I do kind of work the forward way with this, where I am very specific up front, and then I can build off of that.
Yeah.
And then I talk with other people in the writing community that have a really hard time with that, or a really hard time with titles. Because I'm like, well, why don't you just work off like a prompt list? Like if you're hitting a writer's block, just go grab some titles and be like, oh yeah, okay, I can go off of that. And they're like, well, no, I do my titles last. And for me, I'm always like, oh, that's kind of a setback for you there, right?
Yeah.
Because you can take something small and make something big out of it.
Yeah.
Right. For some people where it's common to struggle with creating that title, that's why I felt like it was important to go backwards with this. Because for a lot of people, you are going to want to kind of have a general idea of what you want to do up front towards your plan. Make sure it's attainable first, and make sure it's relevant to what you're trying to do. Keep those two together, because if those two don't come along, then it's literally impossible. So what's the point of moving forward? And then from there, kind of work on a time frame that you would like to see it go into, because you can always modify that along the way.
Yeah.
And then we go into like, okay, so now let's start measuring this. I kind of have this idea of what I want to do. Let's create some milestones. And then as you create those milestones along the way, that's going to paint that picture towards that final goal. It's like how we talk about taking action, taking default aggressive maneuvers and actions in your life. It's always a bunch of micro steps that happen really fast that create that movement, that momentum going forward.
Yeah.
And it's the same way that you can do that when you create a plan for yourself and anything you're trying to accomplish. Is if you can't determine that specific plan, work backwards that way, make your milestones that come up to the idea of your plan. And then by the time you go through and you read all those milestones out, it's already kind of telling you where you're going to end up.
Yeah.
And then you can create that specific idea based off of all those milestones you set for yourself, all the little things you see yourself wanting to accomplish.
Because the important part is getting that initial first step forward and then taking off running. And it's funny because I'm always talking about the like Newton's first law, an object in motion stays in motion. And I guess it's coincidental because my little brother's here doing online schooling, right? And in his science class, they've spent all week talking about it. I'm like, dude, what have I been telling you for like the past month and a half? And he's like, oh, I got this down. And he's just flying through all the assignments like, oh, this makes sense to me because I'm just constantly preaching that like an object motion stays in motion. So like even when I'm putting it into terms of like real life, like if you keep going with something, you're going to want to just keep pushing until, I mean, obviously like you get other like different risks, different stresses that come and distractions that come and try to knock you off course. But as long as you keep going on that path, you're going to continue going on that path. The hardest part was starting, because an object at rest stays at rest.
We're really breaking down human nature and finding ways to work around human nature and get people to be motivated and realize these things, because there is such a need for that because of the disconnect we have with humanity in general nowadays, that it's really important to really understand those things and our instincts, our basic natures, and really kind of play off of that with people and get them to get motivated and get them to move forward and get them thinking.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to really sit down and create the plan, because that's really the first step.
Yeah. But it's also important too that we have to try, like the hardest part is also trying to get people to understand that the distractions in our society are they're built the way that they are to maintain that distraction. They're like social media. It's meant so then you waste your time on it. They want you to stay hooked on it as long as possible. So when we try to get you to understand that, like, that's when it suddenly clicks in your head like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be on this all the time. Maybe I should only dedicate some time to it and then focus on my priorities instead of just sitting on TikTok or sitting on Instagram, just scrolling through the feed all day. Because some people, no offense, some people are kind of like mindless, and whatever is more comfortable, they'll just stick a camera in their face, stare at a camera, stare at a social media feed all day.
I mean, not to have like the tinfoil hat on, but that definitely is the byproduct of that type of content, because the whole point of social media, I mean, it's how do they make their money? It's all those advertisements. Well, and how do they get those ads is like, the more you're on there, the more advertisements you'll see, the more they get paid.
Yeah, I'm not saying like they're out to kill everybody's dreams of being anything with themselves.
Subdue humanity.
Yeah, no. I'm saying like they're trying to get you to just stay on it so then they can make money off of it. Advertisements and all that jazz.
For how big they are, I mean, trust me, they've delved into human nature a lot to realize what it takes to get you to stay on your phone for 8 hours a day. And let me tell you, they figured it out. Yeah. That's for sure. Getting back on topic.
Yeah.
Creating that first plan, the actionable plan moving forward. And it is different than any normal plan. You do want to, it is the emphasis is on the word actionable. Because there's a lot of things that look good on paper that just don't work. And if it's actionable, then everything in that plan you can take action towards, and it's going to work. And this is the way you get that set up. You follow the SMART goals path here, kind of presented forth there by George Doran. Once again, it makes sense. It's really simple. It's really easy. It's going to take a little bit of time, but there's definitely enough ways to break down what it is you're trying to do. And that's why I kind of wanted to dissect this and go back and forth with it. I didn't want to take a forward down approach where we just go through like SMART, because I want you guys to understand that if you just have that general idea, pick and choose which letter you're going to focus on first, because at the end of the day, once you create the whole plan, you can go back through and revise that until you're ready to act on it.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be something where you can take those baby steps forward to creating that plan. Once the plan's done, that is your first step on that journey towards living that more structured and successful life.
Yeah, because if people take that example of like creating that title last that you were giving earlier, I mean, that's probably an easier example for them to grasp onto, because I'm sure everybody had to write essays, and that's always the struggle. That always causes the procrastination and you making an essay out of nowhere at the middle of the night when it's due, right? But that important step is to get that initial step in front of you and continue and keep pushing forward. The hardest step is the first step, but as long as you keep it going, you're good.
Yeah, it's great, man. I think that just about covers it. I think the last important part to this message that I really want to give out is that you need to create accountability some way. Once you have this plan done, that should be your next move, talking about going forward from this. So like, okay, we got this actionable plan going. What do I do next? Create accountability towards it. Friends, family. It's kind of a double-edged sword with that, because, and there's also disclaimers to that. So when you create that accountability with your friends and family, like, hey, I have this plan I want to work towards. I want to work towards opening up this business, or I want to work towards my health or my weight or whatever it is, right? I want to work towards owning a home, something like that, right? They don't need to know the specifics. They don't have to. Tell them, hey, man, I got this really cool plan. It's going to be really great when it's done. And I'd love it if you could just kind of, ask me about it once in a while. Ask me how I'm doing with it. Keep it front and center, because, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
So you want people to kind of bring you back to it and be like, hey, man, remember that plan you were telling me about? I'm really excited to see what's happening with it, because I know it's like this big surprise and you're waiting to tell me. And even if it's not a big surprise, it's just you don't want to tell people your plans. That's fine. I understand that, because you don't have to. Because a lot of it, too, when you create that accountability, you will have so many of your friends and family shoot you down.
Yeah.
For trying to change things. So don't expect the positivity to come flowing towards you because you made this bulletproof plan that's going to work. And then you tell all your family about it and they're like, you're never going to lose weight. Look at all of us. Look at your aunts. Look at your uncles. Fat runs in the family. What do you mean you're going to lose weight?
Well, fat doesn't run in the family. That's why they're fat. Okay.
But you get what I'm saying. Like that's the mentality there of that is just like, you're not going to change. And then you're going to take that plan that would have 100% worked and you're going to rip it up and throw it away.
Yeah. But you know, it's great too. Like we just had a discussion with my mom today, and it was about that same thing that, you know, you're surrounded with so many people that try to shoot you down all the time, and sometimes you don't even know it until you speak up about it. Once you tell them your plans and then they shoot you down, like it almost reinforces your desire to attain that goal when you start defending it. Because then you're like, wait, so it's only me, like I'm the only one that can see myself doing this? I'll do it. I'll show you. I'll show you I'm wrong. I'll show you you're wrong.
A lot of people aren't like that though.
Yeah.
Which is part of the problem that people run into is they get enough negativity and they just like, oh, okay, I'm whatever, we'll call it quits there. So that's really just the disclaimer all in all with that is don't expect everybody to jump on board and be supportive because chances are they won't. And it sucks. It does. But trust me, you go through, you follow this plan here, SMART goals set up for your actionable plan, you'll achieve it.
Yeah. Everybody wakes up at a different point, right?
Exactly.
And if you want to wake up, you can go ahead and like and subscribe to our YouTube. You can share this video. You can share any of the other videos with your friends and family to see if they can support us the way that you're supporting us, and we really appreciate that. You can watch all of our videos. They come out Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 a.m. EST. We're putting out Sunday videos for your entertainment. Feel free to check out all of our socials. They're down in the video description down below. You can check us out Facebook, Parler at The Motivating Force, and Instagram at Podcast TMF. You can always feel free to comment on any of the posts. You can always feel free to DM us and comment down below, and we'll always interact with you guys. It's always fun, great conversations that we have with some people. Go ahead and be one of them.
And until next time, go on and get.